inspired their work. Neuro-linguistic programming was developed in the early 1970s by John Grinder and Richard Bandler, whilst they were studying at the University of California in Santa Cruz. Grinder and Bandler began to study the field of human change, and they studied 3 experts in that field: Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls and Milton Erickson. Virginia Satir is considered the most important person in family therapy. She was internationally acclaimed as a therapist, trainer and author. She wrote several books, among them People Making and Changing with Families, co-authored with NLP founders Richard Bandler and John Grinder. A number of NLP techniques such as verbal matching, predicates, reframing and negotiating with parts were inspired by modelling Satir's therapeutic skills and procedures. Her work concentrated on increasing self-esteem and understanding other people's points of view. Fritz Perls was originally trained in psychoanalysis. However, he broke the mould and came up with his own ideas, which later became known as Gestalt therapy. His premise was that psychotherapy was not just aimed at fixing people, but it would be a vehicle for personal growth and a way of integrating mind and emotions. Perls believed that people should trust their own instincts. He used the parts integration model and believed that the goal of therapy was to work with people to get these parts to work harmoniously. Gestalt therapy focuses on doing and experiencing rather than just talking about problems. The methods and techniques are suited to both individuals and groups, and a lot of the early NLP techniques have a lot in common with Gestalt therapy. Sensory experience, non-verbal cues, spatial sorting, working with parts and polarities also have their roots in the Gestalt approach. In fact, much of the meta model which you'll be learning later on in the practitioner course comes from modelling the patterns and questions asked by Fritz Perls during his therapy sessions. Milton Erickson probably had the greatest influence on the development of NLP. Despite having polio from the age of about 18, he had a career as a psychiatrist and started using hypnosis in his sessions despite much hostility from the psychiatric profession. In the last 10 years of his life, he practiced as a hypnotherapist in Phoenix, Arizona, where people from all over the world came to study and work with him. John and Richard spent some time with him at his house in Phoenix. They modelled his language techniques. His easygoing style of hypnotherapy and open ambiguous language allowed the client to interpret what he said in the way that made the greatest sense to them. This is the basis as we know it today of Ericksonian hypnotherapy, and his language patterns are taught in NLP as the Milton model, which we'll be covering later on during the course. So that's a brief overview of the big influences of NLP. So you can remember who the founders of NLP are, have a go at writing them down now. You have just 10 seconds to write them down. Get ready? Starting now. Well, how did you go? The founders are Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Trust you named them. Well, that's it for this video. You'll see me in the next lesson.